All right. Thank you, Geoffrey. Thank you for that. I think that was very important. Thank you, everybody. So let's jump right into it, and we'll take minimal time in trying to deliberate on this question so that we have the final part where they get all of us interacted. We'll start with the first question, and this goes to the group that was handling the immigrants youth question. What things have you learned as an immigrant child that have shaped your life? What are you proud of being an African immigrant? So this goes to Joseph and your team. And feel free to discuss it, both of you. You have 3 minutes to exhaust on that one. Joseph and your team.
Okay, John, do you have an answer to that? You're going to start it off.
You can start it off.
Okay. So, what have I learned? So for one like crucial thing that I've learned is about persistence. I think that's one thing we take for granted as immigrants. And it's something that you have to have when you come, not knowing the language or barely knowing the language. So having the persistence to continue on learning a language, dealing with culture shock, dealing with just the issues that come around being a new person in a new environment. So that's one thing I've like really learned about being persistent in everything that I do. And then to continue that, to answer the second question is, what am I proud of? It goes back to being persistent. I'm proud of my persistence as an immigrant, of being able to thrive in an environment that's not meant for me, or that doesn't have a lot of people that are like me.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, especially when you're faced with so many challenges, not only in this culture where like it's brand new, there's a lot of things that are very much not the same to what even our parents are used to or anything like that. So it's not like they can exactly provide support or any advice based on prior experiences, but just having the persistence to just keep on going and like taking each day like one step at a time, and just like at least having that in your mind that like, okay, one day might not be so great, but tomorrow will be better. And just like having that positive mindset, I think, is something that has always pushed me through, like no matter where I've been.
All right, thank you. Exauce, I'll ask you this question. And you know, you have an opportunity to also probably touch up on the third one too. Knowing many youths are experiencing challenging situations at home and school, what would you advise them on handling the challenge?
In my personal opinion, I feel like a lot of youth go through a lot of things at school and at home, but something that would really help them would be finding somebody in their community, that they can talk to, because youths, or us as teenagers, we like talking to somebody. We like expressing our feelings, especially because we learn from school and from our cultures. Sometimes parents don't necessarily like talking. It's like their opinion is final, and maybe something that could help is finding somebody in the community who's gone through the same experiences or has been raised here, that could help you, and find somebody to talk to. It could be maybe even at school, but I would personally think that maybe somebody more in the community who's gone through the same experiences as you, that would be like the best way to handle a situation, because it has helped me personally. And I know other teenagers who have gone through the same things, where they're struggling at home and at school, but they have somebody, maybe even a grown up that they trust in a community, that they talk to, and that person gives them advice. And yeah.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate that. So what advice would you give to a younger you? You know, if you're 12 or 13, what advice would you give to a younger you?
If I was 12 or 13, the advice I would give to myself is to be proud of where I'm from, and not be ashamed of my culture and traditions, because it's really hard when you're younger and you're going to school and you're trying to blend in and fit in with the culture here and the traditions here, that you try to like walk away and push away from your cultures, and you're like embarrassed of who you are. But to myself, like a 13-year-old self, I would say be who you are and be proud of your culture and where you're from.
Thank you. Joseph, then John, a minute each to answer that question and touch on the other one. John.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna add on to what she said about having that support system. I think having a support system is like one of the best things that you can do for yourself. Whether it's, and you can have different support systems. Some people are good at education, and those people that are good at education are not so good at emotional. So you can have different people to support you with different things. And yeah, that's all I got.
John.
Yeah, to add on to the whole finding a support system, one thing that I've really like loved about going to the school that I go to now is the fact that there's like mentorship programs in place. And so here, like ever since I've been here, I've been plugged into somebody who I've been able to go to like outside of my parents, who can like guide me spiritually, who could guide me in any way that I've been like I could want. And so it's kind of just been nice to like know, okay, like I have church, I have like somewhere I could go to outside of like my family here, and then like in different areas I have people who I could go to. And so like kind of like the advice that I would at least give my younger self would just be to be patient with myself. I know a lot of the times you can get to a point where you start getting frustrated with yourself about not understanding something or not getting something, and then you just start to spiral even more. And like I struggled with that a lot, of just getting frustrated that I was not understanding something. So just like being patient with yourself and giving yourself grace as you try to learn, or as you try to go through, like even whether it's education or just socially, just giving yourself patience.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll jump a little bit. I'll go to Rose and Mutegi, and I want to throw this question. I'll come back to you guys, the youth. And the question that I have for them is, what are some of the biggest misconceptions between immigrants, parents, and youth? If you would please, Rose and Mutegi, if you can answer that question. And then I'll come back to the youth. So Rose.
Okay. The first thing that I can say about the misconceptions that we have between our youth and the parents, we can understand very well that the parents who are having the youth at this point we are speaking, mostly we are the Gen X, and our youths are coming up to be the Gen Z. So with that being said, mostly the parents in Gen X, we are bringing our kids the way we were brought up. So we have too much of our culture still within us. So, and too unfortunate, we are unable to let go most of our culture, which may not happen, but we forget that our Gen Z generation, which are our kids, are becoming Americanized so much. So they're having, we went through culture shock. To them, their culture assimilated too much. That's something that we as parents, we need to understand. So these are the kids who are trying to understand the American culture and at the same time, balance the culture at home. So the misconceptions that we have as the Kenyan or African parents is that the mental health is not in the part of our gene. And we are the people who are misunderstanding mental health with other health issues. So we kind of do not understand, and I do believe we are contributing to the much stigma going on with mental health. Whereas our kids in Gen Z generation are understanding mental health real well. They can come to you, they can explain behavior changes, even everything they see at school, and explain it to you well as what kind of a mental health issue someone is going through. But we as parents, unless we are educated or we are kind of brought in to understand what mental health is, we might not understand them. So we are still in the generation that is not understanding whatever mental health is, and we'll be the same people who will not discuss it and will not welcome the talk. But too unfortunate, the people we are not welcoming the talk about, they know it better. So I do even believe that at this point, our kids are in a better position to educate us, to bring more awareness of what mental health is, because we might be behind the news of what's going on.
Thank you. That's a beautiful challenge. Awesome. Mutegi, I would like you to answer this question, but feel free to chip in on the question that Rose just expounded. And my question to you would, what advice would you give to other parents or new families about raising the youth in America? Because I know you have the youth in your house. So what advice would you give to them? But feel free also to chip in on the previous question that was answered beautifully by Rose.
Yeah, Rose did answer that well, but just to add, same thing of where we are coming from, a culture where children were there to be seen and not to be heard. This culture is teaching the kids to be very expressive. And, so that's why they talk back to us or they express themselves, whatever they have, in their mind. But we still have that misconception of, if they talk back to us, then that means they're disrespectful, they are lazy, they have an attitude, they don't have manners. So just being able to understand this culture provides that opportunity to express themselves. It's not an issue of being disrespectful. So it's for us parents to understand the difference of their upbringing, from abroad and in this country, that it's really different. I know when I came, and I had my child and, she started talking back to me, I remember making a threat that, I'll send you back to Kenya to a boarding school, because I grew up in a boarding school myself, and I know there are tough, rules in boarding schools in Kenya. And I thought that's the best place for her to go. And I remember paying a ticket for a holiday, and she was so scared that she'd be left in Kenya and I would come back alone. So those are things that, we have to learn. Using threats is not really an approach that's going to work, but, approaching it from the American way and not being so rigid or being tough disciplinarians, as we were brought up. As Rose said, we're bringing up Gen Zs, we have to be a little softer with them, understand their culture in this country. So to answer to the other question, what advice would I give? I think I've kind of touched a little bit on that, but just having an understanding that parenting has no instructional manual. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I just said parenting has no instruction manual. So with that, I say, we ask the grace of God to be good parents. We're given a child in this world, and, we are given like a present. Just the way you buy a TV, we get an instruction manual on how to operate. When you get a child, we don't have a manual on how to operate. So we try our best to be good parents to you. So we do make mistakes, and we learn on the go, but we can never use a one-size-fits-all approach to our children. Those with more than one child, you can tell what, every child has their own personalities, and we cannot use the same approach to each child. So just understanding their different personalities and addressing them differently based on their needs would be a better approach. Then we come with different values. So each household has its values. So it's how do we carry those values and bring them to our children so that they can carry them through different generations. So the first generation, when we get here, we find that we tend to embrace the Western economic culture. We work doubles hours and all that, but we try not to adapt to the values and the beliefs that they bring in. But by the time, we have the second generation, you find that they assimilate very well. And that's why you're finding kids have been able to talk, and express themselves, unlike the ones that have been brought back home. So as a parent, that's, bringing a child in here, the one thing that I know has worked for me personally is setting expectations ahead of time, if it's boundaries or it's rules. But of course, I approach those rules with, with a relationship. I have to build a relationship. I have to build trust with my child, because once they gain trust, then they can be open to communicate with me, whatever struggles they're having, whatever challenges they're being exposed to in school and in the community. As long as we have that open communication, I find that has worked better. And then also being consistent with a kind of discipline. If I'm applying any discipline here, I know understanding, explaining the consequences that come with those, the kind of actions that require discipline, and be consistent across the board, that has worked well. You know, as a parent, at times you feel, you know, you kind of break the rules, or they know how to manipulate, you know, that's, kids have psychology from the day they're born, and they kind of know how to manipulate their parents. You find they know that it's either the dad or the mom who is easier to approach. But, you know, once you have a standard communication and we are consistent in how we approach such issues, we find that to be working well. And then also trying, just especially for kids or generations of parents that have been born here and they have kids in here, maybe they don't have a chance to go back to Kenya, just trying to educate on the culture so that we don't lose our culture. Is it just speaking Swahili? I know we have a lot of intermarriages here, but just not losing that culture from back home. That way they're able to embrace it along as they, you know, they get challenges. They're bullied for speaking a second language, at least helping them to be proud of what their culture is. If it's taking that githeri to school and kids are making fun of you, love that githeri because that is your food that you've grown up with. Teach them that this is food that, you know, that is nutritious, and don't feel embarrassed that somebody has made fun of githeri in school. And then to parents too, something that I find that we lack, you know, we come here, we find ourselves working so hard, is self-care. Mental health for ourselves is very important because usually you cannot fill somebody else from an empty cup. Once you fill your cup, it's easy to take care of your children, address to them, you know, deal with their mental health issues as well. So we take care of ourselves, like they, you know, in the plane, they say, put your mask on before you can put somebody else's mask. So when we take care of ourselves, it's maybe having that one day you go and just get a massage, go get your hair done, you know, just go and spend time with your friends and, you know, not being so overwhelmed by the parenting, because that's the other thing. Once you're overwhelmed, you're not able to deal with your children, you know, with the right mental state. So I think those are some of the tips I would give to the parents, and I'm sure there are more that we can share later.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful. It's really awesome when you hear some of these things from the parent. I know for sure I'm not the easy parent when it comes to my household. So thank you. Priscilla, I'm coming to you. And the question that I'm posing to you, and feel free to touch also on another question. This goes to Priscilla on the professional aspect. What can we do to bring a healthy relationship and better understanding between parents and the youth?
Well, that is a broad question. However, I believe the connecting point, like Miss Mary just said, is trust. Now, we can all sit here and say, oh my gosh, I'm tired of hearing this. However, trust looks different in each family dynamic. And with the youth, they may be sitting here and saying that is great. However, maybe their family dynamic has never allowed for emotions to be expressed in a non-judgmental way. So the youth could be listening and saying, I do want to express that I'm sad. I do want to express that I'm angry. However, they are able to navigate the family dynamic. That's another topic in itself, is families and how they operate in that environment. And so children are a result of their environment. Like Miss Mary just said, trust is the foundation, but that will look different in each home. So the first thing I would say is creating a space that is non-judgmental. As a parent, which I cannot imagine, but I can try and put my shoes in it. I'm sure it is a scary thing to see your child expressing emotions that you probably did not know were lying under the surface, because you are the caretaker. On the flip end, the child trusts you enough to express those emotions, right? And so for sure, connection is the key that will allow healing. Connection looks like trust in the sense of, okay, in this household, when somebody is going through something, maybe you create a form of rules, right? Your house is your own country in a sense. You create a form of rules that, you know, they aren't rigid, but they're able to kind of set that tone of how behavior is modified, right? We are, as humans, we are naturally inclined to repeat what we see. Behavior is easy to kind of express. And so that is learned behavior. And so in what I'm trying to say there is, as the family, as the parents or the matriarchs, the patriarchs, setting that culture of how are emotions expressed in this family? What do positive emotions look like? Let's talk about it. Maybe there needs to be that educational piece also. Miss Mary touched on the generation that is now migrating into the country. They probably were not raised in an environment to express anger or to even be able to name, I am angry, I have anxiety, I am stressed. They probably did not know how to name those emotions that the youth are able to name off the bat. And so maybe there's that teaching phase. I believe that might be the best start. Finding videos as a family that you can share in a group. Hey, I saw this clip on YouTube that is teaching on what types of emotions are there? How are emotions expressed? How do you talk about hard conversations? And not to sound cheesy, quote unquote, appealing to the young generation, because it's okay to not be okay. And I think that's what we're saying here today. Is regardless of how old you are, it is okay to not be okay. And I'm going to bring a spiritual piece here. As a Christian, we know that Jesus himself was expressed as a man of many sorrows. Our creator, our savior, was a man acquainted with many sorrows. And he was able to express those in prayer. And so he is able to connect to us when we are acquainted with many sorrows. So from a spiritual perspective, we're also able to see that Jesus is telling us it's okay to not be okay. And so now from the human side, we also need to do the same in our family circles, in our school circles, and so forth. And so to bring back the question you asked, how can parents and youth connect? Trust for sure, but trust has to be built in the way the family believes it needs to. If it's educational, let's all get educated on mental health. Do we know the mental health resources in our area? What is mental health? What is sadness? What is anxiety? What is depression? Youth, I'm going to now pitch the bat to you and tell you that in the moment of wanting to express, it can be hard to pause and ask yourself, does my mom know what I'm trying to say, that I'm feeling depressed? Maybe pause there and reflect. How do I word this in a way that she can meet me halfway? Because parents, we also have to meet the child halfway. So I always say this in counseling, both parties have to do their work. And so I'm going to pause there and pitch it to Joseph and John, because I believe that they can now navigate us from the voice and lived experiences of the youth themselves and how to navigate that connection, and probably even pitch it to the listeners, because we have been talking and we want to hear from you all. So John and Joseph, however you decide to kind of limbo this, I'm going to pitch it.
Let's bring them in a little bit. Let's bring them in the second question, because I think you'll feature very well. The second question kind of, I was hoping that will bring them in, because it says knowing, and then the question would come to you, then it circles back to to Joseph, and then it comes back to the parent. I think you'll tie it very well. And the second question was, knowing many youths are experiencing challenging situation at home and school. Not that. Your question, actually, the one that I was setting to you was, what methods of communication can you advise the youths to have open dialogue with their parents and vice versa? So I was hoping that you can touch that, then it goes to Joseph, and we have another speaker also, Kamau, and then it can come to the parents, if you don't mind. You're on mute,
Do you mind repeating that again? My mind was processing.
I am sorry. All right, the question was, sorry about that. What methods of communication can you advise the youth to have open dialogue with parents? And then we can go vice versa. The methods of communication that you think would be practical, then they can come in as you come in from the professional point of view, then the parents.
Right. So I first want to touch on the topic of shame because I think that is the root of the youth feeling as if, and shame can be expressed in different ways. It could be nervousness, just that shame of feeling, am I a bad person? I'm a bad person because I'm feeling like this. My parents, my church, my people are always telling me you shouldn't be depressed. God loves you. Why are you depressed? I think touching on that foundation of shame will allow us to now build up into how the youth can now invite their parents into that. Once emotions and vulnerability is being your raw self, saying I am not okay. Once that is addressed, then shame can't stand between the parent and the child, right? Because if we're sitting here and saying the youth need to talk to us, they need to tell us how they feel, but yet the parent is looking through a lens of judgment, then that shame continues to piggyback from the youth to the parent, from the youth to the parent. And the youth will, or the young person will begin to build walls, because when I feel ashamed, I will retreat and I will hide. So that foundation has to now be addressed in what is it that makes you feel ashamed when you talk to me about your emotions, or what is it that hinders you from talking to me about your emotions? I am positive embarrassment will come up some way, some form, judgment in various aspects, whether that is the church, whether that is school, whether that is community members. And that is something that I'm going to touch on very heavily as an advocate and youth minister, is parents and church groups and community groups. We can sometimes be the deterrent of the young people coming to us. Now, this is 50-50. Now, so whenever we are able to remove the lenses of judgment, we can see the youth or the young person standing in front of us as they are. Now, to the youth, once that space is there, you may have this moment of, oh my God, my parent just sat there and listened to me cry for a whole 30 minutes. What is this? It may be a new experience to them. So if you do have that open conversation and you ask them, so what are you thinking? And they don't say much, don't take it negatively. It's because this is a new experience. Because if they have been, their behavior has been conditioned to be met with, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. And now they do, the floodgates open, their minds need a minute. They need some space to also keep building that trust with you. Okay, you let me in this time. Are you gonna let me in again? When are the walls gonna slam shut? So that's kind of where the youth's mind is. And that is because they're in the growing phases. They're in the exploring phases in their minds. And so emotions are high because as adults, we've learned how to navigate ourselves and our emotions, at least to the best that we can. With young people, their hormones are still evolving and growing, so their emotions can skyrocket. But being aware of that and learning ways to bring them down is key. And so ways that the youth can navigate these conversations with their parents is respectfully being vulnerable, being open, and saying, I've noticed in our family, emotions are not invited, and give scenarios. Sometimes our parents need examples because the next question they're going to say, what do you mean? Give an example. The time that I came home, 1, 2, 3, you answered with 1, 2, 3. That way they can see, oh my goodness, my behavior was not accepting of your emotion. So youth, we kind of have to, I get it, you may be tired, but we may have to do that work. And because we're teaching our parents, we have to remember they didn't grow up in a space where emotions were elaborated on. It was either get over it, go to church, get over it, go to school, get over it, get your grades up. So we need to be sensitive there. But parents, when you see your child is trying to create a space of trust with you, it may be uncomfortable because you also have to be aware that you're coming from a generation where your father and mother probably didn't hug you. Emotions were not expressed. And if they were, it was only in the church. Can we talk on that a little bit? Emotions were probably only expressed in the church. So whenever everybody says the grace and we go home, if I want to express something else, it's what's wrong with you? But maybe I was crying in church and that was okay. So we really need to be gracious and bring church into our homes as well. That can be another way of saying it. In that, in this space, not just in the church or anywhere else, you can express your emotions. You can talk about this. And so that's probably the foundation of where I would start that conversation, Mr. Sebastian. I don't want to take too much time because I really want the youth to share their lived experiences and speak from that perspective. I hope that's
okay. Yeah, that's good. And I will look back now to the youth. And as we tackle on that, I want you to tell us, what can we do? What can children do to encourage open dialogue? And I think, Priscilla alluded to that, and trust in the family. What are some of the things that have worked or not worked for you? And I'll start this with Ivy. Did Ivy come out, one of our new panelists who was not here? Introduce yourself and help us answer that question. So I'll give you probably a minute each before we come to the parents, so that you can also hear their perspective on that one. So I'll give, I think we have almost 4 youths, in our panelists that will be able to give us a cross, number of people who are represented today. So Ivy, if you're here.
It's Aimee from Ohio.
Aimee,
Yeah.
Aimee, okay.
No worries. Hello everyone. Habari ya asubuhi. All the way from Ohio. My name is Aimee Kamau, and I was born and raised in Ohio. I go to Dublin Scioto High School. I'm a senior, so I'm just about ready to go to college. And God has been good. I can say that the most part. I'm blessed to have 2 parents. I have 2 siblings. So I'm truly blessed that, God has been favorable for me. The question is to answer how to approach your parents is somewhat of a learned experience, especially for me. It didn't come easy at all. Especially as a girl going through puberty, it was really hard because I would go through a lot of emotional swings. I would be nonchalant, and other days I'd be so hyper that my parents didn't know what to do with me. So you really got to understand that you have to meet your parents halfway, because they know that you're trying to grow while you know that you're trying to go with them. And so one thing I would suggest, especially to the youth, is that you need to try to do everything that you can with love. And we all know that love is patient, love is kind. So for example, if you have a struggle in school, maybe you're not having enough friends, you think you're being left out, being patient enough to wait, ask your parents for advice, that kind of thing, because they are there to help you. They are for you. They're not against you. No matter how many times they might push you down, or you might feel like you're alone, that your parents are truly there to help you. So I would advise that. Also, I would say, if you are a Christian, draw near to the Bible, because life without the Bible is, to me, it's meaningless. So if there's any struggle that you have, go to the Bible, ask your parents to read with you, indulge in that so that you can become stronger together in the relationship with Jesus. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you, Aimee. That was beautiful. That is beautiful. I knew we have a panelist that is a cross section of almost the group that we have. So Joseph, please, if you would allude to the same question, and then John, and then Exauce.
Yeah, and this is coming from lived experiences. I came here when I was really like 7 years old. And then my parents were very strict, like strict. This was like extreme right here. It'll be about right there. So one thing that I incorporated in like my communication with them is asking why. So if like I wanted to go out and then they were like, no, I'm like, why are they saying no? And I would start to understand their perspective. So I started incorporating that in like every conversation I had with them. And then even the hugging thing, where like my dad touching and all that stuff, giving him a hug, that just came a few years ago. So I started asking like, why couldn't he give me a hug? Why couldn't he express emotions? And then when you start asking that and you start creating that dialogue with them, you'll start to see like, oh, this is why you're doing this. It's not that you don't love me. It's that you didn't, that's not how love was expressed in your household. Love, in the traditional sense of like Africans, it was like, I'm bringing in money, I'm paying bills, You should be happy. I don't want to question. But now if you start to dig deeper with your parents and start viewing it from their perspective and asking why they do something a certain way, you'll start to see and ask them questions like, oh, Dad, this is how I expect like my communication or how love to be expressed. This is how I expect it to how I expect love to be shown. Then they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Rather than like having them like guess how you want to be showed affection. Yeah, so that's, I would start asking why and starting that dialogue with your parents. That's my advice.
Thank you. John?
And yeah, and to go along with what he was saying, just that trying to have open communication with now your parents is something that is very, very important. Honest and open communication, especially about how you're feeling. I know personally, I can tell you that like I didn't really start feeling like comfortable enough to talk about now even like those big things until I started small. So starting off by having those like small little conversations with your parents about literally anything. Because that's how you kind of build up that rapport. It's kind of like making a friendship. It's kind of like how you maintain any of your friendships at school. You don't just start off with somebody and start talking about all these big things. No, you start off with small little conversations. And then from there, that's when you start building up those trusts. And so, especially like with somebody who is your parent, who is an authority figure over your life, somebody who literally is supposed to like tower over you and who's literally supposed to tell you what to do, like that is something that's extremely like that's something like that's just, it's just, you look at them and you're just like, wow, how am I supposed to like look up to you and talk to you and tell you, oh, I'm feeling this and this and this. But you have to remember also that this person is also human, and like your parents are also human. Your parents also have emotions. So like having that like communication with them and being like, hey, like stripping them down, like, yes, they're your authority figure, but they're also human. So they'll also understand certain things that you're telling them. So just from like my personal experience, just like starting off, especially like with my dad, like how like I've slowly started to like build up that kind of relationship with him where we can, like, before I'll to be completely honest, like we didn't talk much. And like, but now as I'm getting older and I'm getting wiser and I'm like starting to like kind of like build that relationship with him of slowly like having small conversations, and then now like going into deeper like other conversations about other things that like now we want to talk about. I think that's kind of like at least helped me and him come to a place of understanding, like where like if I say something to him about how I'm feeling, then he'll also know, like then he'll at least have an idea of like how to go about it. Because yeah, that's just something, especially like in the recent past with just like going through like mental health issues and stuff like that, and just like realizing things like that like are going on, like being able to like go up to him and be like, hey, Dad, this is going on, or hey, this is something that I was seeing and like I don't know how to navigate this. Like just last year I had a friend of mine die at school, and so being able to just go up to like my dad and be like, hey, Dad, this is something that like really heavily affected me and I don't know how to navigate this. And being able to just like talk to him, and like we talked actually for a good amount of time, and like just being able to like hear from him as well as just being able to pour out my heart to him was just something that was really like important to me. But of course, like I said, that really didn't start until we started having those small conversations. So yeah, have those small conversations with your parents and then slowly build up to a point where you can have those like big, deep, honest conversations.
Beautiful, beautiful. Exauce?
To add on to what John was saying, I really agree on starting small, because like for me, we're still working on it with my parents. We're still working on talking and opening up. But yeah, I really agree on starting small, because like for me and my mom, I started small. I tried to understand why I was being told no. I tried to understand where they were coming from. And I slowly started opening up to her and telling her how I feel. And also it helps to listen to what they feel, because as much as we're like, oh yeah, I want to speak too, I want my voice to be heard, it's also, it's good to let them speak and let them feel like they're being heard too, because then they're like, okay, they're listening to me, they're listening to my advice, and they're listening to what I'm saying. And that really helps them build their trust to like, okay, I can let my kid do this. And because they listen to what I say, they're more willingly to let you do what you want to do. And they're more likely to listen to you when you listen to them as well. So yeah, just start small and build up to that. And I'm working on it as well as with my dad and my mom. And it's really helping when you start small. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. They say you don't have to control your thoughts. You just have to stop letting them control you. So that's beautiful. That's a good one. Now let's go to the parents. Having heard what everybody has said, Mary and Rose, this question comes to you so that you can tie it well with the kind of answers that they gave us to the question that I had posed. And the question I have for you is, what can parents do to encourage an open dialogue in their families? And you can use examples of how often you communicate with your youths that you have in the house. When do you have face-to-face communications or with your children? So however you want to start. Mary and Rose, if you want to jump into that. Mary?
All right.
Or sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm proud of the youth who have spoken from a very good perspective on John, Joseph, and the other girl. So it's so good that at their age, they can tell us on how communication have started. And thanks to the girl who said she's still working on that. And I do appreciate the honesty. So we as parents, the one thing that we need to understand that we can communicate in a lot of ways. These kids are watching us. So even before we come to actively opening the dialogue, are we presenting ourselves in a way that our kids can look up to us and have a copy of who they want to be? That is number one. Because if we are not presenting ourselves in the best way possible for them to copy, not to be like us, but at least to give a good example of how to behave, on how to go about things, then even sitting down and talking to them with the word of mouth, I don't think it will be effective, because it will be like, do as I say, but not do as I do. In this generation, they still want do as I say and also do as I do, not completely, but they want to have like a copyright. And as we parents, we still want a copyright. If you look at yourself, do you want a copyright of you as far as your kids are concerned? So we just need to kind of make sure that whatever we are doing, is it good for our kids to copy it, or are we doing it hiding? Because even if we hide, they are watching. So to open dialogues for our kids, the first thing that we need to know is to start early. When Joseph talked about it, that things started, the hugs and all these started sometimes back, not when he was a child. I've raised teenagers and my last one is 17. And to her, the last one with the hugs, they're okay. But with the other two, the hugs were not there much commonly like they are today. And maybe they're still minimal, if I can say that. But that's maybe when I'm leaving, when she's leaving for school, maybe we are not together. The chances of being together are by maybe phone saying bye-bye, but the touch and all that kind of stuff. So if we start this early, and if I can be given a chance now to bring up another child, I do believe I can do it better in all these ways, because the small kids can understand all these hugs and then you grow with them. But starting to hug my 20-year-old, then it'll be some work to be done. So starting early to have these open dialogues and connections is very, very crucial to our kids. Then listening actively. I understand with both parents and the kids, we are too much on our phones, whether on social media, whether we are doing homework and everything else. So whenever we are having any conversations, it is advisable to make sure that we are all putting our phones down. Let's listen to each other. Let's even to eye cues of what's going on. Because sometimes when you're on the phone, you might be trying to express yourself by word of mouth, but the behaviors are different from what you're saying. So if we put our phones down and try to communicate only observing each other's behaviors, we can learn more of what's going on. Because I do believe the facial expression of what you're saying can even speak more than the words that you're saying. Then validating the feelings. I don't want a kid to come and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and then like, you can do this. Validate, is that how you're feeling? What did you say exactly you're feeling? There are ways of validating the feelings, especially when a kid is talking about it. It's not just a matter of passing by, or they talk to you when you're leaving, when you're going to bed. You did not even get a chance to validate what they say. And guess what? If they see you are not interested, you did not even validate what they said or the feelings that they had, tomorrow it will be hard for them, even if they'll be going through a hardship, to come and express it to you. So however minimal, or however you feel that the feelings are too little or too minimal for you to validate, you better do it, because the way you handle the first ones is gonna open ways or doors for more communication and more dialogues. So let's not block the feelings, and let's not even give our negative responses. Let's see how we can handle that. Just sit down, listen actively, and see how they feel, and probably you can help. If you cannot help, there are ways of looking for someone else to help. You can look and ask them, have you shared these with so-and-so? Have you shared with these friends? Maybe it's not something so private that they can even talk to somebody and maybe feel like, wow, I'm not alone. I might not be the only person who is going through this. So, and then from there you can see, if it was a deep feeling, then you can see whatever direction you can take it. The other thing is, I talked about being a good role model. That is my number one priority, being a good copy, so that your kids can copy you. When we use the questions the kids are having, maybe both parties, the kids and the parents, if I use a question which requires a yes or no answer, that one leaves, there is no room for more discussion. Hey, do you feel like going to church? The answer can be yes, the answer can be no. But if you come with a way that the question is open-ended, there can be more discussion to that. We can see most of our youth, they're getting to an age whereby they don't want to follow you to the church you go to, or they don't want to go to some gatherings that you go to. But how was it handled? It was a yes or no answer. Or are we going together? No. Are we going together? Yes. And that was it. So, hey, today we are going to this and this direction. If we go, this and this is gonna happen. So let's just have them as open-ended questions. And also, we can see the way forward, because, hey, they can come and say, hey, ma'am, today I don't feeling like going to church because I have this and this and this. But when you leave it to be a yes or no question, then you kind of judge, hey, they don't want to go with me. And then that starts some other issues of trust. And the same case applies to the kids too. I don't want to be asked a question whereby I'll only answer with a yes or no, and that's it. I want more to my yes. I want more to my no. And that's how probably parents we want. And with that doing, then we can get to more understanding of why the children are saying no, why they are saying yes. It's also good to know why the positive, why the negatives, but most likely we kind of tend to go to the negatives and dig deep to them. I want to know, if I tell you that we are going to this gathering, why are you so positive about it? Why are you so much willing? Why are you having too much weight onto this? But when I talk about another gathering that we were supposed to go as a family, you have some negative vibes. I would like to know more about that, because by so doing, I might learn something. I might learn something which is going on, the environment and the people I'm meeting. Maybe there is something I need to know more. So having open-ended question is better than having only answers with yes and no, and that ends. Then the other thing which is very much important is creating a supporting environment. So as parents, do we kind of give that environment, or are we this much harsh that even for our kids to come to us for questioning, for either validating their feelings, are we creating a safe and conducive environment for them to bring their issues? Or we are that harsh, we are that strict, we are that unapproachable as their parents. So let's relax and wait to see how they come, because they know. And as kids, I can tell you, the youth and the young adults over there, the only person who can be of trust to you is your parents. Your parents not gonna go out there saying ABCD about my child. Whether weak, whether strong, they're there to support you, but it's always important to make sure as parents we are bringing that kind of an environment which is supportive throughout. And by so doing, at least we can create room for more dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mutegi.
Rose took most of my points, but these are great points, Rose. Just to add on, one thing I think I would suggest is picking a perfect time to communicate. I think just from learned experience is when you pick a kid from school and you ask them how the day was and they're so tired, the answer is it was okay. And of course, as a parent, you're expecting to hear more, how the day was actually, was there bullying? Was a teacher good to you? Did you pass a test? We are asking for details. So just identifying, when is your child most energetic? Is it in the morning when they just wake up and they want to tell you what happened yesterday? Or is it, during lunch, or is it a weekend? So identifying the best time to talk, you'll find that they are more attentive and they'll give you more information that you're seeking. Rose did say about being approachable. So, being open-minded and also be vulnerable. I think allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, I think it's very important. We are human, we make mistakes, and it's also acknowledging when you make those mistakes. You've given a discipline and then you later learn that, or you disciplined this child for the wrong things, or, the way you approach that discussion was wrong. You yelled at this child because you're so stressed at work. When you come home, you don't want to hear any noise, and this kid is, making noise and we're yelling. Then later on, you gather our thoughts and, you find that you made a mistake. It's always okay to acknowledge you're wrong. Another issue is maybe when you have conflict. I think it's important for your kids to see you have conflict with another adult and see how you resolve those issues. And from that, they learn. As Rose said, that, we are models. The kids learn from modeling. And when they see that you've had a situation with your friends, with your neighbor, with your spouse, and how you've addressed that conflict, they learn a lot, and they also know how to deal with situations when they're faced with those when they're out in the community. Also creating time just to be together to talk. So is it dinner time? And you say, we are all working so hard, we have sports, we have work and all that. But if you could create just one day in a week, is it a Friday night to say it's movie night, a pizza night, and we're sitting down just to have conversations? Let's all check in to see how the week went, who had the best time ever, who had the toughest time, how can we help you have a better time tomorrow? So creating those moments, and also moments for tough conversations. For me, I found that having tough conversations in the car, because my daughter will not run away or get into her room when I start having tough conversations. She's like, oh, mommy, you're embarrassing me, or she doesn't want to hear these topics. I realized when you go on a drive, she listens. She's not going to put those headphones on. She'll listen to me. So I think it's just looking for when's the best time to have those conversations, creating time for each other. Is it doing chores together? Those with girls, is it, even boys, sitting, in the kitchen, deciding what recipes you're going to cook, or, doing chores together, clean the car outside, do gardening, whatever. Having that interaction does provide a space for communication. And many times you find that, the youth are not putting the walls up, they're not shutting down, or they're not on their gadgets all the time, or having outbursts, because they don't know how to express themselves. So those are the few suggestions I would have.
Thank you. That was beautiful. It was a good answer. Now I'll come to you, Priscilla. But in the meantime, every other panelist, because you're winding up, we can go on and forever, but we know mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how we drive, not where we are going. So Priscilla, I'll ask you a question, but every other panelist, get ready for this answer. How do we talk to each other about romance? If you found somebody that you love, how do you communicate to your parents? And parents, what are the best way that you receive that information? I don't know. I didn't talk to a girl until I was like 25. So my answer would not be applicable at this time and age. But Priscilla, can you tell us, this is probably the last question that I'm coming to you. How can parents and youth approach seeking professional help regarding mental health? And what could be the earliest signs of mental health? If you want to tie those two together, and then I'll jump to.
Can you stop? Thank you.
I don't know who that is. If they would mute themselves. Sorry.
Yeah. So you want me to tie those together?
If you don't mind, and if it's possible, do it. If it's not possible, let me know.
Yes, I may need a brain break in between the questions, but I know the first one was about having conversations regarding romantic relationships. I think first and foremost, love is a foundation of humans. So parents, let's just digest that. Children love you. They love people that they meet, their friends. However, the adult does set that boundary, right? I think that is a family dynamic. I'm going to bring that back. However, parents, let's not be shocked if your child tells you, there's this guy in my class and there are some feelings that I'm feeling. They may be able to name them, they may not. I think for them to get to where they've shared that with you, that is already a trusting circle. And your response determines how often you will get invited as they get older into romantic relationships. And I'm going to go back and say this, the parent, as the child is young and grows, they set the boundaries, they set the rules as the caretaker. And so they may be able to navigate, although those feelings are great, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, what I'm trying to say is not to say, no, my God, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. What are you talking about? Boys do not exist. I don't want you to look at a boy. You need to be a nun right now. Confess your life to Christ. We have to be realistic and know that the young people are going to school in mixed company. They will have, they are spending 8+ hours with the opposite sex, 8+ hours. Let's just think about that. That is not to negate that there are behaviors that need to be controlled and there are conversations that need to be had about these emotions. And youth, you may know what I'm talking about without talking about it, and parents as well. But I'm going to go back to what John said, start small, work big. And so to just summarize is I believe that parents should be open to that conversation, because if we are inherently wired to build connection, then what God put in us to love one another is a good thing. But like the Bible says, we do not need to awaken love before it is ready. So although that feeling is good and welcomed, the parent needs to navigate that with the child, depending on the age and many other factors and how their family dynamic moves. So that's probably the best way I would answer that, and just say, please do not shun that conversation when it's brought up, parents. Allow that safe space to navigate it. And I think also maybe asking open-ended questions. Oh, wow. When did you start feeling that way? Or what is it about this individual that makes you feel this way? Because I think that allows you to know your child. And if the child is saying, well, they're very kind to people, they always help the teacher, then you're kind of getting an idea that your child is seeing good characteristics in the opposite sex or in someone that they've seen in the community, that it may not be even a romantic aspect. It may be an aspiration or an inspiration. So having that dialogue will allow you to know your child and also maybe let you know that, okay, you're raising them well and telling them, although those emotions are good, I think I would like for you to hold or pause and be a good friend to them. And like I said, I'm going to leave that to the family dynamic, but the questions should be welcomed and answered.
I think you can touch on the second question, if you don't mind. How can parents and youth approach seeking professional help regarding mental health issues before we go back to the other people answering the romance question?
Sure. So in terms of mental health resources, I think there is this movement of therapy being the cool thing to do. Everybody needs to go to therapy. And although that is great, there was a time where that was not a thing. I would encourage us to discern what is a cry for help from the child, right? And then what is a serious issue because what therapy is therapy is a safe space that allows the child or adult, whoever's seeking it, to navigate some things that they may not be able to do comfortably, and when I say comfortably, I mean, they may want to go deeper and that person that they may be discussing may not be able to handle that. I think we need to be okay with, you can't be the antidote to everything. If I'm going to therapy to discuss some things that maybe, my parent or a school teacher did to me, although I would want to have honest conversations with them, there may be a level where, let's just face it, it may hurt the person that you are discussing with. And you may need to go to therapy to now find that neutral ground as to how to come back and have that conversation, or maybe not, or maybe move forward in that relationship to better it. So that's what therapy does. It acts as a bridge to navigate difficult conversations. So I believe that every family should be aware of mental health resources in their area. You can easily Google that if you're living in Texas, and you can even get more specific and say youth programs in Texas, youth counseling programs, youth counselors in Texas, adult counselors in Texas, counselors that deal with grief in Texas, counselors that focus on couples in Texas. So counselors are able to focus on different subjects. So there are marriage counselors, grief counselors, youth counselors, and also just general all across. They're able to handle all facets of life. And so having that, maybe it's a folder that you all share in Google, is good. And there are also hotline numbers. You may not even have to leave your house to access a therapist. For the youth, there are hotline numbers that you don't have to have a guardian. That's why they're there, because in that moment of distress or crisis, you can dial that number, have that conversation with the hotline, the counselors that are briefed. And then now I would encourage you to go back to your parents and say, hey, I did dial the youth teen hotline. I just was having some moments and I needed to discuss a topic. That's where the parent can now say, oh, I'm so glad that you took liberty to take charge of your mental health. Parents, let's applaud the youth when they step out and do these things. It's not the time to say, why did you do that? Why did you call that number? The number is safe. They are trained therapists. It is free. It's called a crisis hotline. Now, youth, navigate what is a crisis. Crisis is when you cannot take this back to your parents. You cannot take this to anybody. You're heavy breathing, you're sweating, and you need someone to talk to that you do not know of. That, in a sense, is a crisis, and you need to vent and have that conversation. If it is not a crisis, try to now navigate with your parents or a friend, somebody in the community that you trust. And so, bottom line, knowing your resources in your area is key. Parents, if your child comes to you and tells you that they've accessed one of these free resources, applaud them and build that trust to ask, okay, what were you seeking? What was the issue? And be okay with getting as much information as you can, and kind of allowing that to build to where now they can fully tell you what it is that they did discuss. But I think applauding them, like Ms. Rose was saying, and affirming that action is key.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll give the youth, I'll give a minute each. Just tell us how you navigate through this issue of romance. For me, it was, I was not attracted by behavior. My wife was just beautiful. It was pure physical. I saw eyes and I followed. And I don't think that's how you want to tell your parents, that I saw beautiful eyes and I followed. But that was me. Joseph and your team, just a minute each, and tell us how you navigate through that, and then we can go to the parents, how they receive it, and then we'll close it up with again back to Priscilla.
I'm still thinking about it. John, can you take this away? Still thinking.
That's
about
okay. I'm
this
not going to
topic.
tell your parents. I mean.
No, I remember when I came home with my girlfriend for the first time.
Oh, I didn't think you have one, John.
I had one. Yeah, I had one. And I remember it was my birthday. I came home with her. So we were planning on like swinging by my house for that first meeting, like on my birthday. She was like, okay, yeah, I think this is good. So we swung by and grandma was there. We weren't expecting that. But like, at least I had like what happened was I had prepped them before. I had kind of like sat down with like, actually it was both parents, and I was just like, hey, there's somebody who who I saw, and like somebody that I've been talking to, and somebody that I'm interested in, and like this is this is who she is, like this is where she comes from, like it's this type of person, like these are kind of the qualities that like kind of attracted me, and we kind of went from there. And like they kind of told me what they were expecting, and I took that in, and I let them, of course, tell from their perspective of just like things to be wary of and like things to look out for and whatnot. Because of course, and like some of the things that they were telling me were like things that were like, okay, yeah, that's something I hadn't even thought of. And so like it was more of like okay, like it was not like I wasn't going from a position of like, oh, I'm gonna tell them. If they say no, I don't care kind of thing. It was more of I'm going to tell them because I want this to be something that they, of course, also bless in a sense, because I don't want to be doing something without my parents' consent. And so I kind of it was just an open conversation with them. And like, of course, like I had that same conversation with like their parents as well. And so it was just like, I went to her, like we went together and kind of like talking with like my parents at one point, and just like the introduction. And so like I kind of felt like having that like first step of me going by myself and being like, hey, this is this person, like there's this person, and then also like having that person come and meet the parents was something that was very, very crucial for me. And I just thought, and of course, like, it was it's an interracial relationship, which was a whole other beast. But like, just again, having the like starting small and then building up is something that I would say really helped me when like I brought up like relationships with my parents.
Awesome. Aimee, and if you don't have one, just tell us how you plan to approach it. I was not as good as John. Mine was pure physical. John was going into the qualities and what Jesus says. Mine was, I just saw a good girl and I was on it. Aimee, is she there?
I think she's still she's on mute.
All right, I can't say that name. I can't picturing the name. Yeah, I got it. Say something.
Okay, so on the romance topic, I'm still very young, so if I brought that up to my parents, it's gonna be a little, scary. But I feel like I believe that it should be talked about a little more, to where you don't want to like hide it, because as teenagers we have these feelings that we don't really understand, and you want somebody to talk to, and your parents have been through that and they didn't have anybody to talk to when they were growing up, but you want somebody to talk to. So I feel like that should be something that's talked about a little more, because then it would help you figure out that. And also, it's not like when you talk about it, you're telling your parents, yeah, I'm doing this and I don't care about what you're going to do. But it's more like, yeah, I feel this way help me, what should I do? And if they say, oh, I don't think you should do this until you're this age, you're in your parents' home until you're 18, so you have to follow that, but you have a reason why. It's not and you wouldn't necessarily want to go behind their backs anymore, because you know how they feel about it. You have had an open conversation with them, and they've explained to you why you shouldn't do this until you're older, and they just help you understand what you're feeling a little more and what the consequences or the good things that will come out of it, to where you don't want to hide it from your parents anymore, because they know how you feel and they're telling you, yeah, you should do this later on in life, but it's okay how you feel. Just don't, act on those feelings yet. But yeah.
Gotcha. Man, you
Yeah,
guys
and
are
Sebastian, if I can answer this, I think I have everything in my mind now. So I'll build on what John said, is like it goes back to the open dialogue. Like, I'm not gonna like one day just pop up with a girl in my parents' house and say, hey, this is my girl. I don't care if you care, she is what she is. It's having that conversation even before you get a girlfriend, is like saying, hey, like one day I'm gonna have a girl, one day I'm gonna bring her to you guys. Just starting that conversation early rather than just one day surprising them. And then everything should start from a place of respect. I think that's a very important thing, because if you don't have respect, like that whole like bringing a girl over without notifying your parents, just it's something that's very disrespectful. You may consider as something small, but it's something disrespectful. You should have that respect with your parents and give them a heads up, like John was saying, where he spoke to his parents and then like told them about the person and all that. And that shows your parents that you're a mature person and that you're ready to like go out and explore those emotions. And then also the other thing is boundaries. Having boundaries, I think, is a very important thing, because there's certain even though I'm all for having communications with your parents, there's certain things that when you're in a relationship that, or even a friendship, let's say, that you and your friend are supposed to have, and then your parents shouldn't know about that. So I believe in that, establishing those boundaries with your parents, saying that, yes, you're my parent and you should know most of my stuff, but there's certain things that I'm willing to share with my partner and not you. And then communicating that rather than just saying, oh, you shouldn't know, that will make that communication between you and your parent better. And it goes back to that respect.
Thank you, Joseph. Man, when you talk here, you look like a different person than, anyway, let me stop right there. But I like that. Vulnerability sounds like the truth and feels like the courage, so I like your answers. Aimee, are you here? Give us an answer without telling us so much about your love life. Just a little bit, like hint, we won't tell anybody. Aimee Kamau, is she back or is she there? If not,
I see her in the
go ahead.
chat.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay.
Can anyone see me?
We can hear you and see.
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm back. So romance. I was, oh my gosh. At a young age, I was encouraged to be friendly. That's what it was. But romance wasn't really as big as it was until middle school. So I would advise all the youth that if you have a great friend group, okay, don't always, spill too much, but it's okay to talk about it, like qualities in a guy or qualities in a girl, such things like that, just to get a gist and comparison of maybe what you should be looking for and what you should not be looking for. When talking about it with parents, for me, I did have some crushes and, flings, if you want to call it, but it wasn't really as deep as a true romantic relationship. So when I'm talking with my parents, I would be like, hey, this is happening. How do you feel? Should I keep talking to them? Little things like that. Be open about it. Because if you're not open about it, little things will...
Did we lose her? I think she's
I
having
don't know.
No, she's
She's
a
going
little bit
into
of
the ether.
network issues. Yeah,
always
I think that's the part that she don't want us to hear, but that's fine. All right.
Hey, Amy,
We
maybe we can mute her and yeah, she
and
muted
move
her.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'll jump very quickly a minute to the parents, just so they can also allude to that point of romance. Then I'll come and close it down with Priscilla. So Mary and Rose.
Sebastian, I think we had Miss So. You may have missed out on the list, and I see she's in the audience.
All right.
that you
What's
missed.
her name again?
Miso, just the name.
Miso?
Yeah, just say Miso. The rest of it you might mess up.
All right, Miso, can you say something about that too, and introduce yourself and say something about that before I go back to the parents? All right, Miso, when you're ready, I'll come back to you. So I'll go to Rose and Mary, if you want to just touch a little bit, just a few minutes before we are way past our time, and then I can have Rose, we close it up. So I'll start with Rose. And then Mary.
That's a very sensitive, very sensitive to us as parents. But like I can say and encourage our youth is you won't be the first ones. We went through it, we managed. And so like Joseph said, it's always good to start early. Sometimes I like talking about a topic when it's not at hand, because when it's at hand, we might discuss some negativity, you might start hating, you might start seeing as if you made a mistake. So it's always good to bring this kind of discussions in a family table when they are not at hand. So maybe we have discussed, hey, let's not talk about love or relationships before you get done with school. So there is a time for everything. So I wouldn't expect somebody before you turn 15 to come and bring such kind of a discussion. You might be doing it behind the parents' back, but there is always time for a mature discussion about love affairs. So when you talk about it early enough and your parents, maybe you've discussed about it and say like, hey, let's not talk about this until it's time. Let's honor that, because if you bring it before time, it might backfire and the discussion might not go as you wish. Because at the table, when you talk about it, you'll talk about, hey, I want a girl, this and this and this and this. So you kind of talk about the qualities of the person that you'd love. So with that kind of a discussion, when you go out there, you'll be knowing what to look for. And that's your wish. That's not your parents' wish, but always bringing a discussion on the table, it's always good. And by that doing, then by the time it will become real, the love affair will be mature, bringing the person now to the people you've discussed about this person that they were not aware, but the qualities, the characteristic you are looking for have been found, bringing now a picture of the person. I do believe it will be more appreciated and welcoming than just bringing a surprise, like Nganga said. So it's always good to have these discussions ahead of time so that when they are real and when they are mature, at least there'll be some backup and bringing it to the table will not be as hard as bringing a surprise.
Thank you. Mutegi?
I come from a background where I was told, don't talk to boys because boys are bad. And I was not explained to the why. And of course, when it came to the time to figure it out, we had to make some experiments that were not very good. So my approach is having those conversations early in advance works very well. So my daughter is 14. We've had these topics on sexuality, because that's the other topic, you know, it's an issue where gender identities is such a big thing in schools today. So we approach those topics in advance. So my first question to her is, if you had to be attracted to somebody, what gender would you be attracted to? She's like, oh, I like boys. And that was a good conversation starter. And then we went down that way. It's like, you know, what do you think, you know, how do you feel about it? You know, what are you attracted to? And just yesterday, she told me, man, all those boys in my school are so immature. So I can tell right now she's not in a place to really have a boyfriend. She says, I would rather just wait maybe when I get to college. So it's her own timing, she knows, because we've talked about what's a good quality of a boyfriend is. And right now she's like, those boys, you know, they're dirty, they stink, you know, she has all these qualities that she's looking for. So she, at this point in time for her, I know her place in time. So we do have approach those conversations. You know, she tells me what's happening in school, and then we, you know, she bring it up and we sit down and discuss it, the pros and the cons. There was the issue of abortion that's coming up, you know, such topics, we approach them. It's a political issue. Let's sit down. What do you think? And she'll tell me her views. So I'm very open-minded when it comes to this topics of sexuality. And I think it's a good approach where it's a non-judgmental zone. I ask very many questions to gain understanding, and then we can have a better communication where she knows she can trust me. I'm not judging her for making any bad decisions. I've had parents come and say, you know, especially for us immigrant kids, when it comes to an issue of prom, okay, we are discouraging them from having boyfriends right now, but they're being asked, you know, to go out for prom. And one parent said, you know, it's so sad when our kids go to especially white, you know, schools, the white kids are being asked for prom, but our African kids are not being asked for prom. What does that do to their mental health? They think they don't belong because how come everybody else is being asked and my daughter is not being asked or my sister is not being asked, I'm not being asked. So it's how do we approach that? How do you gain acceptance? It's okay for you to go as a group of girls. It's okay for you boys to go as a group of boys. You really don't have to have somebody. You don't have to be forced to be in a relationship just because you have to take a date to a prom. And of course, it's very expensive. That's what I understand. I'm yet to get there. So having those conversations, I think it's very important.
Thank you. That is awesome. I think we touched on all the aspects that it comes to. So even if we don't have the power to choose where we come from, we can still choose where we go from where we are. So Priscilla, I'll give you 3 minutes to wind this up. I would have wanted us to go on and on, but it's 7:43 and I really do not want to keep you anymore. So I'll give you, Priscilla, maybe 3 minutes to wind up on the topics that we alluded to. Mm-hmm. I think at some point we were up to 100 and nobody else was able to join. So we will open up next time. So I'll hand it to Priscilla.
Awesome. Thank you so much. First, I want to just appreciate you all for being here. Like Mr. Sebastian said, mental health, there's no destination. I do not want anyone to leave here feeling, well, we didn't get somewhere, because it can feel like that when we're talking about such a heavy topic. However, just know that each one of us being here, we're champions. We can advocate in our own circles for this topic, specifically as diasporans and Kenyans and Africans in general. And so I'm just thankful to have this space, and thank you for the youth for speaking on behalf of just everyone here. I know we couldn't get to every youth or young adult, but thank you, John and Joseph and Exauce and Aimee for covering that. So to wrap us up, I will just say mental health is health. Let's just go ahead and I think we've massaged that and we've understood it, that it is a part of our health and well-being. And it covers different aspects, physical, spiritual, and financial, right? We know that sometimes there are barriers to accessing mental health services. You may be that good Samaritan or that person who is wanting to take charge of their health, but there are financial barriers there. And so we do understand that that can affect one's mental health and stress as well. But most importantly, this is just a dialogue that will have to be continued. I believe Mr. Jeffrey will invite us for a part 2, but the takeaway is this. Parents, there is a lot that your young people and your children can teach you as it relates to mental health. No one here is left behind, quote unquote. Even if you feel you are, it's never too late to dive into the material. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. You can just simply start with YouTube videos or just talking to your child and say, hey, do you want to attend a support group together? Do you want to attend a group therapy session, or even just YouTube and watch some videos? There are many avenues to make mental health fun. It does not have to be a sad, depressing topic. We do know it can be sad, it can be depressing. However, it can also be fun. We can be advocates of this in many other ways. And then for the young adults and the youth, I believe this is a start, to inviting our parents to the table. And like John said, I think we've all been going back to his comment and Joseph's, start small. You can get frustrated, and it's easy to say, my mom should understand me. She birthed me. Why does she get it? She should understand this right now, right now. I need you. That feeling is okay. It's validated. But pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what can I do? What small steps can I do now to invite her into what I am feeling, to invite my parents into what I see on the day-to-day and how they can help me? And parents as well, let's not exhaust and be encompassing. Oh my God, oh goodness, let's pause and ask, okay, what is the emotion? What are you feeling right now? And just give that space and that time. So I believe those are the takeaways today. I would be remiss, Mr. Sebastian, sorry, if I did not segue and shout out my dad. He is here, Dr. Solomon Waigwa. And if you are okay with it, I'd love for him to greet us and just say something small, if he's available. Dad, if you're there.
I just got back. I had gone downstairs. I am at a professional meeting in Indianapolis, Indiana, and one of my professors was stranded in Dallas. There was bad weather. They just arrived, so I had to make sure that they come to the hotel. But I didn't want to participate in this. I just wanted to listen, and I have heard a lot of things. But I want to thank. I think it was Rose Njenga. I think that's her, and Mutegi. Just before I went down to the low bay, I heard some of the things that that they said, and I cannot thank you enough for saying that we parents have to really model good behavior. I think that was very well said. And when both of you talked about the parents should not say, do as I say, but do as I do, you reminded me of a new book that just came out. I teach, so I use a lot of books. A book called Daring Greatly. My daughter was reading it, not this daughter here, Priscilla, but my older daughter was reading this book, so I read it too. Renee Brown is the writer, Dr. Renee Brown. She is a social worker, and she urges parents, on chapter 7 of that book, you can look at it, she urges parents to not ask themselves, what is the best way? Am I doing the right way in parenting? She says, the question should be, are you the adult that you want your child to grow up to be? And for me, that is very profound. Are you the parent that you want the child to become? And so what we do is we try as much as we can to become what we are asking our children to become. And so that's what I would say about that. That's what you reminded me about, Renee's book, Daring Greatly, in terms of raising our children, because we have a responsibility to raise a generation of readers. Thank you so very much. And the organizer, I want to say that we need to bring in more parents into this, so that they also can hear what the young people are saying. Thank you so very much. Young people, God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waigwa. I know you are a good student of my dad, so there was no way I was going to say no. Otherwise, I would be in bigger trouble than anything else that I can think about. I want to thank our panelists, Priscilla, Mary, Rose, Joseph, and John, and Exauce, and Aimee. Thank you so much for making time to be with us here. This was awesome. I think we cannot be an island. This is how we get information. This is how we process information. Mental health problems don't define who you are. They are something you experience. You walk in the rain and you feel the rain, but you are not the rain. So this is very healthy for us in terms of the discussions that we had today. To our audience, thank you very much. Thank you for participating. I know we had a lot of parents who are tuned in, and I think this is priceless information. I always tell people that these panelists that we have here have a lot of information that sometimes you would pay a lot of money just to attend such seminars. But for us to get the information for free, I truly want to thank Vitendo for Africa and thank Geoffrey and the organization for putting these resources together. Actually, today we had a bonus also from Dr. Waigwa, at the very end. So that is very welcoming. So thank you, and thank you everybody else who attended. I am sure we'll organize for a second session. And I will now, we can give a big hand of applause. You can either send whatever you want to send through that to our panelists for what they did, wherever you are, because we enjoyed them. And thank you so much for being vulnerable to us and giving us information sometimes that was very sensitive from your perspective. But that's the only way you create the change. It's that vulnerability that you do. So thank you so much. And I will now hand this over to our CEO, Geoffrey, to go ahead and wind up. But again, thank you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for attending this meeting. Have a wonderful evening. Geoffrey, back to you.
Thank you, Sebastian. I appreciate you for that, moderating the meeting tonight. Like everyone have said, that was awesome. That was awesome. That was very nice meeting. I really, we cannot get enough of you. We hope that we can be able to continue having a part 2, like Priscilla said, and also Dr. Waigwa. Thank you so much, even for taking time to be with us today. I will want to recognize some people who have been part of this. And just as we wind up, for those who have a couple of the representative, oh, good, no. Why is telling me to change? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. It's giving me an error message on my side.
You're on mute right now.
Sorry, yeah. So Priscilla, I was just sharing on the Zoom here so that we can get to know the people who were part of this and this conversation that we'll continue doing. Youth Engagement Society, that was Priscilla. That is based in Texas. Then we have IHO. Is Rose in the audience?
I'm here, Jeff. I'm here.
No, Rose for Florida. Okay. I think Rose, and then we have APAD from New Jersey with the Sarah Munyiri. Anybody from New Jersey? And then we have Ohio with Mr. From Ohio community, I think, and we had representatives that were there with us. We really want to appreciate you. And then we have the Kenyan community also. I think it was in Seattle. I see Jacob there. Are you there, Jacob? Thank you so much for mobilizing your youth and also the St. Louis community. Thank you so much. Oh, Jacob, you there?
Yes.
All right, you want to say hi?
I just say hello to everyone. The conversation was deep. We welcome this conversation all over the country, especially for immigrant community, especially our youth here in the Northwest, in this side of Seattle. We welcome this conversation, and we want to continue this. We're also doing in our own way, taking steps to help our youth, and this is really needed. we are technically a community in crisis because of mental health and youth challenges that are brought about by them being here, and all the identity crisis, and the conversation that can give us some tools to be able to raise our kids, raise another generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, sir. The great what you're doing. Also, the other group, the little we are doing in our small groups in our network means a lot. And then when we come out together, we can help each other. I didn't want to ignore any other group that I didn't mention, but we will continue doing this and having more conversation that we can be able to grow. I know there is an idea that is going on for us to be able to meet in person in June. And Mr. Washington from Ohio is helping us to coordinate that. We hope we can meet in June for a retreat over the summer when we can meet in person. Those details will be communicated later. So we want to appreciate our moderator tonight, Mr. Sebastian, and our panelists. That was awesome. We really, really want to have you part 2. Again, I hope when we reach out to you,
yes.
you will be saying yes, and I appreciate that. Priscilla, thank you so much. You've been a great resource in so many ways. Every time we reach out to you, sometimes I feel like we should be putting you in the V4A board. You're a great resource. Thank you so much for the team that I was able to put this idea together. Rose, Sylvia, Catherine Papai, Joyce, and Dr. Madoni. We appreciate you for this great idea, and we hope that we can continue doing that. And then lastly, I want to mention that there are some upcoming events that will be continued doing it. This includes February 11, where we have couples dinner. February 18, we have youth mentorship meeting that will be in person. But on February 25th, we have promoting boy child. We all want to be more inclusive and reach out to everybody. This will be will be an in-person meeting, and this will be held at the church, where we also have some people who are going to be cutting them hairstyle, showing how to tie their tie, but also more important, having a conversation on how to be able to be presented, to present themselves, but also maybe also how to have some of those ethics and be able to be grown, be responsible men. We don't want to make the mistakes when they're young that will haunt them for the rest of their life. We want to prepare them to be responsible. And then this Saturday, we have Understanding Life Insurance. We have great speakers that are put together. We'll meet together. We all have been having all this fundraising and all these issues going on. We want to come up with something that will be able to help you, not just for the immediate need, but also for the family that may be left behind. And that will be this Saturday at 11 a.m. and p.m. And then I think I mentioned about the couples dinner. If you really want to make it Valentine's, and like many said, I think Mary also mentioned that you wanna be able to take care of your mental health so that you can be able to help others, then this starts with you taking care of yourself, and more importantly, also taking of your partner who is also helping you raise your kids. Other than that, I would say thank you so much. I appreciate you for responding even when we reach out within a short notice. We will have a meeting for the parents, and I'm glad Dr. Solomon Waigwa is with us. He has led those conversations. Now the conversation we've had today, we want to now go further, take it further, and find a way how we can implement some of those ideas. How can we now start implementing those things that we have shared and heard from our young people talking to us, and seeing how we can use those conversations to improve our relationship, so that we don't have to wait until serious issues happen. I think I sent a text that I say, there are times that will come where we'll need to stop. We need to ask ourselves, we need to stop pulling kids out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out who is dropping those kids into the river. And the way to do it is when we become very active and proactive to prevent serious issues to happen, people to go into depression. Before somebody get into depression, there's so many things that have happened along the way. And the purpose of us having this conversation and ongoing conversation is to make sure that we are able to address those issues before they become serious. We have created a Google Drive document with a great resource. I know I have almost exhausted for the resources that I know for Missouri. I know we're working with other people from other states. We will put it together and we'll make it available to you so you can be able to find out some of the resources that are next to your door. And if you have some people who are calling from out of states, you can literally go to that document folder and tell them, hey, I'm far from you, but I know a place that I can refer to you. And you can be able to refer them to get the services they need. We don't have to wait for things to go to be that serious. One last thing, as we leave, any information that you have learned today, any information that you've gathered today, please be generous. Reach out to 2-3 people, have a conversation, talk to them. And more importantly, if it's an adult we have in the group, please be intentional and reach out to at least 3 young people that you're going to be able to mentor. Not necessarily to mentor them as in professional way, but just being the person that they can be willing to reach out to you and share their challenges and share their issues that they're going to. If you're a young person, have one person that you can count on, and you have to reach out. They don't have to reach out to you. You can also reach out to you and say, I have one adult that I trust, that I count on, that I can always reach out to them and share my challenges. If parents, if you're not able to, because not all the parents are very, very open, but have somebody who your parents can trust, and that they can have a conversation and have dialogue that will be able to help narrow the gap that may be existing between you and your parents. And then the last thing is, if only we can always, once in a while, you can always try to, if you're a young person who is in this forum, you understand other young people that are in your network. You know when they're going through, you know when they have the challenges they go through. You could be the only person that could be able to help because no other adult know them, but is your friend. Be intentional and take it as a responsibility to know that I will be checking on my friends. I will be what I call the community health first aid advocates and be able to talk to them so that you can give them the confidence to go out and seek help. Let them not sleep under the rug, the challenges they go through, but have a way that you as a young person, you are doing something that will help your colleagues. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again, probably in a month for the Parents Forum. And I think we hope that you will be able to help us reach out other like you did today.